A black and white photograph sits in an archive. The date printed on the back reads 1905. The image shows a man standing in his personal library. His name is Alistair Finchley. He wears a three-piece suit. His expression is calm and dignified. Behind him, leather-bound books line wooden shelves from floor to ceiling. The photograph looks ordinary. It is one of thousands just like it from that era. Men of modest wealth often had their portraits taken in their libraries. It was a way to show education and status. This photo seems to follow that tradition perfectly. For nearly 100 years, the photograph remained unnoticed. It sat in storage, filed away with countless other images from the early 20th century. Eventually, it was digitized. A scanner captured every detail of the original glass plate negative. The digital file was added to a database. Archivists tagged it with basic information. Subject: Alistair Finchley. Date: 1905. Location: personal library. The file was stored. No one looked closely at it. No one had any reason to. But the photograph held a secret. Hidden in plain sight, on one of those shelves behind Finchley, was something that should not exist. An object that defied explanation. When an archivist finally examined the high-resolution scan years later, they noticed something strange. One book spine looked different from the others. The font seemed wrong. The design appeared too modern. They enhanced the image. They read the title. What they discovered was impossible. The book on Alistair Finchley's shelf in 1905 was not published until 1968. 63 years separated the photograph from the book's first printing. How could a book from the future appear in a photograph from the past? The photograph came from the Finchley estate. Alistair Finchley was a merchant who lived in upstate New York. He bought and sold textiles. His business was moderately successful. He married once. He had 2 children. He died in 1922 at the age of 57. His death was not newsworthy. No obituary appeared in major newspapers. He was an ordinary man who lived an ordinary life. When Finchley died, his possessions were divided among his children. Most items were kept or sold, but some things were saved. Among these items was a collection of family photographs. The images sat in an attic for decades. In the early 1970s, Finchley's granddaughter decided to donate them. She contacted Cornell University Archives. The university accepted the donation. Among the collection was the glass plate negative of Alistair Finchley in his library. The negative was catalogued and stored. It remained untouched for nearly 40 years. Then, in 2011, Cornell began a major digitization project. Dr. Margaret Chen supervised the effort. Her team worked through thousands of images. They used high-resolution scanners that captured incredible detail. These scans revealed things invisible to the naked eye. One day, Dr. Chen reviewed a batch of newly scanned images. The photograph of Finchley in his library appeared on her screen. She zoomed in to check the scan quality. Her eyes moved across the shelves behind him. Most of the books were old. Their spines showed wear. The titles were hard to read, but one book stood out. The spine looked cleaner. The font was sharp. The design seemed modern. Dr. Chen felt uneasy. She flagged the image. She sent it to Thomas Berkeley, the archive's digital imaging specialist. She asked him to enhance that section of the photograph. Berkeley isolated the book spine. He applied filters. He adjusted contrast and brightness. Slowly, the title became clearer. He could read most of it. The words appeared to be, "The Burden of Consciousness." Berkeley ran a database search. He found the book immediately. The Burden of Consciousness was a philosophical text. It explored questions of self-awareness and human existence. The author was David Miles, a British philosopher. The book was published in London in 1968. It became influential in academic circles. Copies existed in libraries around the world. Berkeley checked the publication date again. 1968. He looked at the photograph date, 1905. The math was simple and impossible. The book in the photograph existed 63 years before it was written. Dr. Chen called a meeting. She invited Dr. Edmund Price, a rare book historian from the university's library. She showed him the enhanced image. Dr. Price examined it carefully. He magnified the section even further. What he saw troubled him deeply. It was not just the title. The cover design was wrong for 1905. The typography was too clean, too modern. But more importantly, Dr. Price could see part of a small logo at the bottom of the spine. It was the publisher's mark. He recognized it immediately. It belonged to Ashford Press, the London publisher that printed the first edition of The Burden of Consciousness in 1968. The logo did not exist in 1905. Ashford Press was not founded until 1952. Dr. Price made his conclusion. And this was not a case of two different books sharing the same title. The book in the photograph was physically identical to the 1968 first edition. Same title, same design, same publisher's mark. It was the exact same object. But that was impossible. The team had to consider the obvious explanation. The photograph must be fake. Someone must have created it recently. They must have added the book digitally or through some other method. It would be relatively easy to do with modern technology. The team contacted Dr. Sarah Whitmore, a specialist in historical photography authentication. Dr. Whitmore came to Cornell. She brought equipment. She needed to examine the original glass plate negative, not just the digital scan. The team retrieved the negative from climate-controlled storage. Dr. Whitmore began her analysis. She worked methodically. She tested everything. First, she examined the chemical composition of the photographic emulsion. The emulsion is the light-sensitive layer that captures the image. Different eras used different chemical formulas. Dr. Whitmore took microsamples. She analyzed them using mass spectrometry. The results were conclusive. The emulsion matched the standard silver gelatin formula used in 1905. The aging patterns were correct. The oxidation was consistent with a negative over 100 years old. Next, she examined the glass plate itself. Old plates have manufacture marks. These marks changed over time. Dr. Whitmore found the mark. She cross-referenced it with historical records. The manufacturer was Eastman Dry Plate Company. The specific style of mark was only used between 1902 and 1907. It was authentic. She examined the image content. She verified Finchley's clothing against fashion records from 1905. Everything matched. The suit cut, the collar style, the tie. She examined the other books visible on the shelves. She could identify several titles. All were published before 1905. She examined the furniture, the wood style, the carving details, the construction methods. All were period appropriate. Dr. Whitmore used specialized equipment to look for signs of manipulation. She searched for evidence of double exposure. This is when two images are combined on one plate. She found nothing. She looked for scratches or alterations on the negative surface. The scanning showed none. She examined the image for digital artifacts. There were none. The photograph passed every test. Her report was clear. The glass plate negative was authentic. It was created in 1905. It had not been digitally altered. There was no double exposure. The book was captured in camera. It was physically there when the photograph was taken. The team was baffled. If the photograph was real, how could it show a book from the future? They investigated the people involved. They looked for connections. Alistair Finchley died in 1922. David Miles, the author of The Burden of Consciousness, was born in 1935. Finchley was dead before Miles was born. There was no family relationship. Finchley lived in New York. Miles grew up in Manchester, England. There was no geographical connection, No correspondence existed between their families. There was no possible way Finchley could have known about Miles or his future work. The story leaked. Someone from the archive mentioned it online. Within days, it went viral. Forums erupted with theories. Bloggers wrote articles. YouTube videos appeared. The photograph was labeled an UPART. This stands for out-of-place artifact. It means an object found in an impossible context. Theories multiplied rapidly. Some people claimed Finchley was a time traveler. They said he brought the book back from the future. Others argued David Miles was a plagiarist. They claimed he somehow saw the 1905 photograph. They said he stole the title and wrote his book to match. Some invoked the Mandela effect. This is a phenomenon where large groups of people remember things differently than they occurred. They suggested reality had glitched. The photograph captured proof. Cornell University faced pressure. Emails flooded in. News outlets requested interviews. Dr. Whitmore grew frustrated. She believed in science. She believed in evidence. There had to be a rational explanation. She refused to accept supernatural theories. She demanded one more analysis. She wanted to use the most advanced technology available. Cornell's equipment was good, but not the best. Dr. Whitmore contacted the Advanced Forensic Imaging Laboratory in Boston. This private lab served law enforcement and museums. They had equipment that cost millions of dollars. They could detect things no one else could see. The glass plate negative was carefully packaged. It was shipped to Boston under insurance. The lab received it. They placed it in their imaging chamber. They used multispectral imaging. This technology photographs an object in dozens of different light wavelengths. Some wavelengths reveal details invisible to the human eye. They used 3D laser scanning. This creates a microscopic height map of every surface. It can detect alterations as small as a few microns. The analysis took 3 days. The lab sent their report. Dr. Whitmore read it alone in her office. Her hands shook. The report was shocking. The photograph was not a digital fake, it was a physical one. Someone had performed microscopic surgery on the original 1905 glass plate. The lab found tool marks. They were invisible without the laser scanner. Someone had used a micro-abrasive tool. They had carefully scraped the original book title off the emulsion. The scraping was so precise it removed only the top layer. It left the rest of the image intact. Then the forger had painted a new title onto the negative. They used a brush that must have contained only 1 or 2 hairs. The paint was a custom-mixed chemical paste. It matched the color and texture of the original emulsion almost perfectly. The forgery was so skillful that it was undetectable with normal equipment. Only 21st-century laser scanning could reveal the truth. The how was solved, but questions remained. Who did this, and why? Dr. Chen and Dr. Whitmore reviewed the archive's records. They looked at everyone who had access to the negative. They focused on the 1970s. That was when the Finchley estate donation arrived. They pulled employment files. They read processing logs. One name appeared repeatedly: James Kowalski. He was a work-study student in 1976. He processed the Finchley donation. His job was to catalog and store the glass plate negatives. He had access to the darkroom. He had access to chemicals. He had access to the negatives for several months before they were filed. The team dug deeper. They found notes from Kowalski's supervisor. The notes described him as meticulous and skilled. He was a hobbyist photographer. He developed his own film. He experimented with different techniques. The notes also mentioned his interests. He loved science fiction. He read authors like Philip K. Dick and Isaac Asimov. He was fascinated by time travel stories. Dr. Chen found one more detail. In 1976, the burden of consciousness was becoming popular on college campuses. Philosophy students were reading it. Discussion groups formed around it. The book explored whether consciousness was a burden or a gift. Young intellectuals found it profound. The evidence pointed to Kowalski. He had the skills, he had the access. He had the opportunity. He knew about the book. He loved the idea of time paradoxes. The team formed a theory. James Kowalski was a brilliant, creative student. He was also bored. Processing old photographs was tedious work, but he saw an opportunity. He could create something remarkable, something that would not be discovered for decades. He would plant a historical time bomb. He chose the Finchley photograph carefully. It was clear. The shelves were visible. He selected a book spine that was easy to alter. He researched period-appropriate techniques. He mixed his own paint to match the emulsion. He practiced on damaged plates that were scheduled for disposal. When he was ready, he performed the surgery. He scraped away the original title. He painted "The Burden of Consciousness" in its place. He added the publisher's logo. He worked with incredible precision. Then he filed the negative away. He knew that someday, someone would scan it at high resolution. They would see the impossible book. They would be amazed. They would search for answers. He would be long gone by then. The prank would be perfect. The team tried to contact Kowalski. They searched for him. They found records showing he graduated in 1977. He worked in commercial photography for a few years. Then the trail went cold. No recent address. No social media presence. Some alumni records suggested he moved abroad in the 1980s. They could not confirm if he was still alive. The mystery was solved, but not completely. The photograph was not evidence of time travel. It was evidence of human creativity. It showed what patience and skill could achieve. Kowalski had fooled experts for 35 years. His forgery survived examination by multiple specialists. Only the most advanced technology revealed the truth. The photograph remains famous. Cornell keeps it on display. The label now tells the whole story. Visitors come to see it. They marvel at the skill involved. They appreciate the elaborate joke. Some people are disappointed. They wanted the mystery to remain unsolved. Others admire Kowalski's artistry. The case raises interesting questions. How many other historical artifacts might be clever forgeries? How many will remain undetected? What other time bombs might be waiting in archives around the world? Technology keeps improving. Every decade brings new tools that can see deeper and reveal more. Objects that seem authentic today might be exposed as fakes tomorrow. The Finchley photograph is a reminder. History is not always what it seems. Evidence can be manipulated. Even experts can be fooled, but truth has a way of emerging eventually. Science and patience can solve almost any mystery. Sometimes the answer is not supernatural. Sometimes it is just a smart person with time, tools, and a sense of humor. James Kowalski, wherever he is, probably smiles when he thinks about his creation. He succeeded beyond imagination. His impossible photograph became legendary. It sparked debates. It made people think about time, reality, and evidence. It proved that one person with creativity and dedication can leave a mark on history. Even if that mark is a lie, it was a beautiful one.